Well, John, you know that all these boycotts against the NFL have really worked. I mean, the league is nobody watches the NFL anymore. It's absolutely struggling. I think their profit margin is down to $20 billion a year or something. Their ratings are down to being the highest ever. And now another reason for the tough guys in the audience to quit watching the NFL again right before they flip the TV back on. The hip drop tackle. How can we watch football without a hip drop tackle?
I am like legitimately upset at this. Like, when you look at all of the rules that have gone against the defense and for the offense, some of them for very, very good reason, in terms of trying to limit head injuries, limiting knee injuries, especially the quarterbacks. That's all really good stuff. It's just like, how are you supposed to tackle someone right now in the NFL? I don't know. And like, I didn't know that the hip drop tackle was this some ultra dangerous thing. So I think it is. It's a soft NFL. I'm quitting. I'm not watching it anymore ever again.
I'm not even going to talk about it the rest of this podcast.
I love it. Let's talk about our favorite foods. Let's talk about anything else besides the NFL. And by doing that, Jim, we will be the canary in the coal mine. We will be affecting the change, because as soon as people see this and listen to this, they'll be like, they're right. I'm off the NFL bandwagon now.
I mean, for me, the hip drop tackle was the only reason I ever watched to begin with.
Without question.
It's the most entertaining play in football.
Absolutely. I mean, how many Eric Kendricks, just great hip drop guy. Now he's going to be out of the league because of it. So,
I mean, what would John Randall have been without the hip drop tackle?
Not in the NFL, not in the Hall of Fame. Certainly, he'd be stuck back in Texas A&I Kingsville, probably, as a adjunct professor of some sort down there. So.
The adjunct professor of hip drop tackle.
Yeah, that's
By
right.
the way, you're reminding me of my roots in this town. I came up here to cover the Vikings, and I'm standing out on, and we'll get to Harrison Smith and salary cap and JJ McCarthy and all that in a minute. But I got to tell you, I come up here to cover the Vikings, and I can't remember if it was my first or my second training camp, or it wasn't even training camp. It was like rookie camp after they had the draft, and they didn't draft John Randall. Nobody drafted John Randall. And they had this, and I'm watching this great Vikings offensive line, Randall McDaniel, Gary Zimmerman, Kirk Loudermilk, these great players. And here's this like 250-pound dude who's just buzzing around them in the summer heat. And they're all cussing at him. And they're like, stop it. This is a bleeping rookie camp. Stop making us look bad. It was John Randall, undrafted guy. And back then, I would it was a looser time. I would text John in the off season, and I say, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I was just out in the backyard." I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Working out." "You're working out in your backyard?" He says, "Yeah, I have my wife get in the center stance and snap the ball, and then I practice getting off the line."
I mean, what wife wouldn't want to help with that? Like, that's the amazing thing. A part of that story is just like, she's out there in the Texas heat going through the workouts with John Randall, and that's why he is where he is. He's a maniac, just an absolute maniac.
Wife drills and hip drop tackle made John Randall what he is today. All right, we're going to get serious now. This is the Viking Update Show, part of TalkNorth.com. He's John Krawczynski from The Athletic. I'm Jim Souhan from the Star Tribune. Brandon Morton is our longtime producer. We're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios. We want to thank Aquarius Home Services and Define Destinations. We'll tell you more about John's trip to Spain a little bit later in the show. Highly recommend it. These trips are really well done and a lot of fun. Also want to throw in just a bonus mention of two of my favorite businesses in Minnesota, TSR Injury Law, 612 TSR Time, and Twill in the Edina Galleria, the best men's clothing store in Minnesota, a place I do all my shopping. TwillMN.com is the website, but I recommend just going there in the Edina Galleria, checking it out. Let's start here. Harrison Smith, when we talked to him at the end of the season, it sounded like he was leaning toward retirement. He was all beat up. He's coming off a losing season. He had time to think about it. Not only does he re-sign, but he re-signs a very team-friendly deal that, listen, this team has a lot of problems. They got to find a quarterback. They got to find some secondary talent. They have to have a good draft. But they are now set up in terms of the salary cap brilliantly. They've got lots of money this year. They're going to have a ridiculous amount of money next year. And if they can get the right terms with Justin Jefferson, signing him is I don't think it was ever really a problem, but it's going to be easy to do.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me. I had a conversation with Chad Greenway like years ago now. just kind of talking about what players go through in a season, especially later in your career. And at the end of every season, you take a poll of that locker room, and I bet 75% of the players would say, yeah, I want to retire. Like, my body's been through too much, especially if you've been on a team that hasn't won much, that has had a long season. And so now that said, I'm sure that Harrison Smith absolutely 100% was really thinking about retirement, was really contemplating it, wondering if he wanted to come back for another season. But to get him back at the number that they got him at, I think it speaks to two things. I think it speaks, one, to Harrison Smith's maybe optimism that this thing can turn around a little bit quicker than maybe some people might believe, but also that we've talked about this on this podcast before, but I do think Kevin O'Connell has done a really good job of creating an environment that players want to be in. And so maybe if O'Connell wasn't as good at establishing that kind of player friendly, hospitable environment that gives guys like Harrison Smith input in what's going on, but also makes them feel valued and comfortable. I think that it would have been a lot easier for him to walk away. So having, coming back for one more year, giving them a reliable player on the back end and on a defense that is certainly in transition from old to young is going to be important. He's a really important voice in that locker room. To do it for the amount of money that he did, and to really kind of open up more options for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah to hit free agency and to re-sign players and do all these things, not just this year but next year especially. I think that's really it's really important for this team's efforts to not go completely into a rebuild and see if there is any pathway toward being competitive next season.
No doubt about it. I do a lot of outstate radio hits. I was asked today, is Harrison Smith a Hall of Famer? My answer was, I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he's going to make it because it's such a complicated system, and you're comparing a safety who played in 2020 in the passing era against offensive tackles from 1965 and running backs from 1980. I have no idea. What's your view of that?
Yeah, what I like about the NFL Hall of Fame is it's really hard to get into. Like, that's what it should be. The Basketball Hall of Fame is ridiculously easy to get into. I think the Baseball Hall of Fame is loosening just a little bit, but still good and still demanding. But I think that the process for the NFL Hall of Fame just does make it really difficult. Now, I think, though, Jim, that my impression is when I sort of consume national NFL analysis and kind of look at the bigger picture, it seems like there is a lot of support nationally for Harrison Smith as a Hall of Famer. And I almost feel like there's oftentimes where you'll see, a player and his standing locally is so much higher than what maybe the national perspective of him is. And I think Harrison Smith is obviously incredibly popular and valued here locally, but I wonder if this is one of those cases where, he's never won a Super Bowl here. He's had a brilliant career. He's been terrific for a very, very long time. And I think he's been really, really appreciated by the fan base. But I almost wonder if, like, from a national standpoint, it seems like the people who do vote on these things are even more bullish on Harrison Smith than maybe even it is from a local perspective. And so I think that because of all those things, I do think that it is very realistic that he could be a Hall of Famer, but it may take a while, and he may have to kind of come up, be introduced in the right year or several years where maybe there's a little bit of a downturn in just the available talent to put in there. It's a possibility, but yeah, I wouldn't stamp it and say he's a surefire. It's definitely going to happen. But I think his standing within the national NFL media world that votes on these things is going to help him in that regard.
Yeah, I think you have a good sense of it. I also think that he checks a lot of boxes in the right way. He was he was all pro. He was a frequent Pro Bowler. He was one of the better players on a number one ranked defense. He made big, flashy plays. He didn't just have interceptions. He had interceptions returned for touchdowns. He was able to rush the passer. He was versatile. He could play near the line of scrimmage. I think in some ways he was almost like Troy Polamalu without the hair commercials.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like you think of, there's not a ton of safeties that get in, right? I mean, he does not play a glamour position, and he has never been the flashy safety type. Like, so the people who get in, Polamalu, Ed Reed, like those types of players. I think what's his name from Seattle will get in from the Legion of Boom, but like Harrison Smith is quiet. He's had big plays, but he's very quiet. Like he's never been like a sexy name, across the league. And safety is not one of those positions that is like just goes in droves, like receiver is lately, or quarterbacks or any of those. So that kind of maybe works against him a little bit. But you're right in terms of just his versatility in playing the run and the pass, the tackling ability, all of that stuff. Like I just think there's just a lot of respect for both his high end, like how he was at the peak of his career, but also his ability to stay in this game as long as he has. Like I really do think that the fact that he's been effective and impactful this late in his career and for this long, that means something to voters, and that is going to help him as well.
I agree with you. And were you thinking Earl Thomas with Seahawks?
Yes, Earl Thomas.
Yeah.
Yes.
A heck of a player. But I don't know. I think Harrison might have had an even better overall career than Earl Thomas, even though Earl Thomas's peak, he got to win a Super Bowl and play on a truly dominant defense. Let's go big picture on the defense here. At this moment, losing Danielle Hunter, but bringing in Van Ginkel and Grenard and Cashman and Tillery, and some linebacking depth and Shaq Griffin for at least cornerback depth, if not another starter. Are they better or worse than they were when they ended the season defensively?
I think they're better. I do. You lose Hunter. Obviously, that's a huge loss. But I do think when you look at depth and when you look at the amount of talent just from on all three levels of the defense, I think that Brian Flores is going to have more to work with next season than he did this season. Maybe you do not have yet the dominant pass rusher that Danielle Hunter could be. But I think that you have more horses, and who knows what happens in the draft coming up and all of that. But I do think that from the outside looking in, I think Kwesi's had a good offseason so far, and he needed to have one. He had to go get some more talent. He had to be, and I think he was very efficient in the way that he doled out his resources. He went for young guys, established guys, experienced guys that can make plays, and I think that are athletic and can get out and run. And I think in the case of Grenard, certainly a guy with upside that you think his best days are ahead of him, and if he gets into a system and with a coach like Brian Flores, you got to think that he's going to bring the most out of a player like that. So I still think that you're missing on this defense the star pass rusher, the star shutdown cornerback. And those are obviously the hardest things to find. But in terms of the depth from at all levels and giving Brian Flores more options, I think they've done that. And that's a good place to start for what they needed to do with that group.
By the way, looking at their depth chart, something I just noticed that it hadn't really registered before. Right now, their starting front seven includes 0 Vikings draftees.
Interesting.
It's 6 free agents, and it's 1 undrafted player in Ivan Pace, which is really interesting. And then the secondary, which looks like a complete mess at the moment, is all Vikings draftees.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means, but I found it interesting.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, and I mean, you could say it's an acknowledgement, at least, of like, so far, either the draft picks that Kwesi has invested in those areas or what he inherited were not good enough, and it's a recognition that, hey, we got to get better any way we can. If that means I got to go out and sign guys, that's what you have to do. But I do think it shows that there is a sense of urgency to inject that defense with more speed, power, talent, athleticism. And we'll see if these guys can all stay healthy and all that. But this group that is coming in this offseason feels much different than last offseason. I like Murphy. I like the addition there. But when you're talking about Marcus Davenport, you're like, man, he's hurt a lot. Like, what's going to happen? And he hasn't done a whole lot for a while. And there are guys here with either more proven track records, more recent success, or that you can look at and say, okay, there's real upside with this player that in the right system with the right coaching, he can really kind of take off. And so I think that's, those are encouraging things for Vikings fans to see here.
Let's get to the real big picture topics regarding the Vikings. You know what they are. But first, I want to thank Aquarius Home Services.
Scott for Aquarius, wishing you a happy new year. And happy, how can we be only halfway through winter? Want some good news? Now is the time to replace your old furnace and AC with a new high-efficiency whole home heating and cooling system. Because at Aquarius, you can install it now and not pay a penny until next year. Visit AquariusHomeservices.com and schedule your free estimate today. Financing offers subject to available credit. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended.
And John, tell us about your trip to Spain.
August 22nd through 29th, go to defineddestinations.com. We are headed to Spain, Madrid, and Barcelona, two of the most exotic cities in the world, for a week-long trip. It's going to be unforgettable. We are going to be staying in 4-star hotels right in the heart of both Madrid and Barcelona. We are going to have tour guides locally there that can show us to the best spots for museums, sightseeing, landmarks, all of the things that you could want to see. We are going to have wine and sangria tours. We're going to have unbelievable food options and meals. We're going to spend time together. We can talk Minnesota sports while we're over there. We can just hang out and enjoy each other's company. We're also going to have plenty of time to kind of branch out and do things on our own, individually. If there's something that you want to see that's not on any itinerary, go do it. Bring your family, bring your friends to a taste of Spain, defineddestinations.com, August 22nd through 29th. It's going to be fantastic, and I can't wait to see you all there. I've really been looking forward to this. Michael Russo has taken several of these trips with Defined Destinations and has absolutely raved about them. So I can't wait to get a chance to do this with all of you as well. I hope you sign up.
Thanks again to Twill in the Edina Galleria, Scott Dayton Shop. Go in and tell Scott Dayton we sent you. And thanks again to TSR Injury Law, 612-TSR-TIME. You know the drill. If you're hurt, call 612-TSR-TIME. And if you know anybody, a business, or you have a business that you would like to reach our audience, sponsor the show, you can reach our sales executive, Karen Cleary, KCLEARY at talknorth.com. It's going to be a fascinating offseason and a fascinating season. So what do you make of the latest rumblings regarding the draft and the quarterback situation? We are now hearing that the Patriots might be open to trading the 3rd pick. The Cardinals are eager to trade the 4th pick. The Chargers might trade the 5th pick, and that the Broncos want to draft a quarterback. So many things can happen at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, Jim, because it does feel like this week, we've been talking about trading up for a long time, but it really feels like, okay, as April is approaching here, the steam is really picking up, that the Vikings have the ability to go up, not just to like 4 or 5 for JJ McCarthy, but maybe to 2 or 3 for Jaden Daniels or Drake May. And it's a lot of chatter right now about what's available, about the package that it would take to go up and get one of those guys. And you and I have both talked about this, but I don't think that Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah made the trade with Houston to sit there with 2 picks in the first round and take players, whether it's quarterbacks or whatever else. He did it so they could package up and go get someone. Now, What's it going to cost to get up there? Seems like probably a lot. But I think that right now, just with, if you want to read the tea leaves and look at kind of the way that the discussion has gone, it seems like the idea of getting up high enough for May or Daniels is a more realistic possibility than what I initially thought. I kind of thought that the trade that they made would be to allow them to get up high enough to take McCarthy, and that's where we would end up. But it sure seems like there's a lot of people that believe that they're looking to get even higher, and that is possible if they want to pay a pretty penny for it. And so I think it's going to be just incredibly interesting to see how the market shakes out and see exactly where the Vikings end up. But I think, that's in play right now in a major way, and there's those conversations going on.
I think the Patriots, well, let's put it this way. If the Patriots really like Drake May, I think they'd be crazy to trade out of number 3 because they need a quarterback as much as anybody. But this is always the X factor when we speculate about drafts. We don't know if they really like Drake May.
Right.
If they hate Drake May, then trading out a 3rd pick for 3 first rounders or whatever they get for him is a brilliant deal. But you have, so it all comes, the main point of all the speculation is, what does a team really think of somebody? If the Vikings had any chance to get Jaden Daniels, I would pay extra to get that guy. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I trust Drake May. I think J.J. McCarthy might be less talented than Drake May, but more reliable than Drake May. I'd feel better about getting J.J. McCarthy. But you know what? I also admit maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Drake May is the next Justin Herbert or whoever. But that's my current read, is that I would love to see them. I'd love to see them. If they got Jaden Daniels, I'd say this is the win of all time. If they get McCarthy, I'd feel pretty good. I'm just not sure about Drake May right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that when you look at quarterbacks going high over the years, it's entirely possible in 5 years we're going to look back and say, how could anyone take Jaden Daniels over JJ McCarthy?
Yep.
Like, how could that happen? How could Bo Nix have fallen to the end of the first round or the start of the second round? Or why did anyone think Caleb Williams was going to be this can't miss star? Like, it's wide open. You really, like, it's so hard to do. People swing and miss all of the time. Really good, smart evaluators do. So certainly I'm going to look at myself and the way that I grade it, and I'm with you. I like Daniels, I think maybe even the most out of anyone in this draft. And maybe I'm dead wrong, or maybe I'm going to end up being absolutely right and look back in 5 years and say, man, Jaden Daniels, what a franchise-changing talent. And the Vikings using 4 first-round picks to move up and get him, it would have been worth it. I'd have given him 8. Like, that's entirely possible. So this is where you really have to lean on and be confident in whatever your talent evaluation is. And I do think the opportunity is there for the Vikings or any other team, the Broncos, anybody, to potentially take advantage of a new New England Patriots regime that is doing this all for the first time. And I would have liked it if Belichick was still there, because I don't think he's very good at drafting. And so he may well trade out. Maybe these new guys, Gerard Mayo and the new GM of the Patriots, maybe they're going to be great. And maybe they're going to build the next dynasty. And maybe they're like the Detroit guys and are going to rebuild this Patriots team and make all the right moves and the right decisions. Or maybe they're really new at this and they don't know what they're doing. And you can get up to 3 because they don't really like Drake May, and maybe May turns into a superstar. So I just think that element really intrigues me about the conversations that are going to happen with the Vikings looking to move up this year. You really don't know what the Patriots know and if they are absolutely right or way wrong. And so it's a possibility that they could get up to 3 at least. I would be shocked if the Commanders don't take Daniels at 2, Jim. Like, I would be. But, if the Vikings really do like Drake May, at three. I think they could get up there and get it. And maybe, the Patriots would just say, we don't really like this guy. And maybe they'll be totally right. Or maybe turns into a superstar. But just the newness there, I think, opens the door for more possibilities than if it was a more established head coach GM combination in New England.
Agreed. Good stuff. Let's get a final thought from John and myself. Once again, thanks to Aquarius Home Services, thanks to Defined Destination. Check out twillmn.com, Twill in the United Galleria, and TSR Injury Law. We appreciate you listening. I'll start with the final thought, let John wrap up the show. This might be recency bias, but this feels like one of the most dramatic off seasons in Vikings history and in NFL history. In part because nobody wants to take time to rebuild anymore. Everybody's trying to rebuild in about 2 months. The Bears look like they've already completely turned it around. The Commanders might be one quarterback away from turning it around completely. The Lions turned it around so quickly. It feels like everybody understands the right coach and the right quarterback, you can win quickly. So nobody's going to be patient. Everybody's going to go for it. And it to me, it creates this really compelling, dynamic offseason. And I'm enjoying the heck out of it, even though I have no idea what's going to happen next. Your final thought, John?
Yeah, no, I'll build on that and then incorporate mine. But I would agree with you in terms of, because all of the anticipation right now from in locally here is that the Vikings are going to go up and get a quarterback, and they just never do that. And they absolutely 100% desperately need one. And so this is that fork in the road moment for them in terms of, I would be really surprised if they don't move up and then and take a quarterback. And now it's a matter of, I don't care what you're paying. It's, do you pick the right guy? And if you do, that sets you on this course to compete with the Lions, to compete with the Packers, to hang with the Bears, and to really be equipped to slug it out in what could be a very good division over the next 5-8 years. If they miss on their quarterback, now you're looking at a scenario where you become the new Lions of this division, not as hapless as they once were, but in terms of being, it just is going to be so hard to be competitive in this division if Caleb Williams turns into a star, Jordan Love looks great already, and the Lions look loaded from top to bottom. So those are the stakes that are facing the Vikings right now because of the position they are putting themselves in by going up and picking this quarterback. And it's very, very easy to blow this pick. So yes, I think I agree with you in terms of just how significant this moment is for this franchise. And that kind of leads me to my take on my parting shot or whatever is, we are still like more than a month away from this happening. Like,
I know.
Is it not remarkable? Like, I mean, it's Monday as we're recording this. There is so much talk today, right now, about what can the Vikings trade? How many picks would you spend? Who do you like the best? And we still have like 31 days before they're gonna make their move, get up there, and try to pick. And so it's just like the thirst for this moment for the Vikings is just at an all-time high. And it's going to be amazing to see how the discourse goes over the next 4+ weeks before we get to that moment.
We're going to take full advantage of it. We're going to throw all the speculation out there. We're going to throw all the possibilities out there. We'll also be honest about what we really think is going to happen so you can make fun of us when we're wrong. Hey, thanks for listening. Check out the John Krawczynski Show on the Timberwolves, one of our most popular shows at TalkNorth.com. Support our sponsors. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.